Several lawmakers from both sides of the aisle, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, have publicly said they would support a ban on Russian oil imports to the U.S. And joining us now by phone is Gary Clark. He's a chairperson and professor at Dillard University. And Terrell Starr, he is host of the Black Diplomats podcast. He's a journalist. He is living in Ukraine right now. Thank you so much both for joining us. Terrell, I'm going to start with you. First of all, how are you doing? This is a difficult situation. And can you please describe your current situation and surroundings for us?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. Right now, we are in the final leg of transporting a family from Kiev to the western city of Lviv, where they will be handed off to Lithuanian organization that will take them to the capital of Vilnius. And because there is a member of that family who is seeking cancer treatment. And so that's been some of the work that I've been doing. In addition to my journalism, what's happening on the ground is that you have trips that would ordinarily take 7 hours.
Terrell, I believe we may have lost the connection. Obviously, Terrell is in Ukraine, so it is difficult. But we also have on the phone with us Gary Clark, who is joining us from Dillard University to talk about what we're seeing unfold there. We are trying to get Terrell back on the line with us. Gary, if you can hear me, though, I would love your thoughts on Vice President Kamala Harris possibly heading overseas to meet with Polish and Romanian leaders to talk about Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, well, let me say that I'm also having Wi-Fi problems as well here in the States. But what we have is that the fact that the vice president is going to speak with our counterparts, and she's making a trip to Poland, and she's going to and Romania is very, very good. It's good politics and it's good policy. And what it does is that it lets the world know that how important that area of the world is to the United States.
I want to try and go back to Terrell in the Ukraine. Terrell, I'm hoping
Sure.
You can hear me. We want to make sure that we know that you're safe, first of all, and continue the discussion about what's happening over there. Terrell, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. So, as I said before, I'm taking a family to the western city of Lviv, and it was one of several families that I and my colleagues are helping to get to the border. This family has a person who has dealing with cancer issues, and so it's one of the types of displacement that's been taking place in the country. And so what we see are checkpoint after checkpoint after checkpoint, tens of thousands of cars going to the same locations that's essentially clogging up the roads. You have situations in which there is no housing on the way there. You have gas shortages, and it's just causing continued distress for the people who are trying to leave, that 1.5 million people who have already left. And, you also have to keep in mind that there are airstrikes that are taking place throughout the country. And so people are dealing with that as well. But this is really displaced people who are disabled, people who have various terminal illnesses, and people who are poor. And so whatever issues that were taking place before the war are further exacerbated by this crisis that President Vladimir Putin created.
Terrell, do you feel like you personally are in danger where you are? I mean, are you able to get food, shelter? I mean, obviously you are in your apartment there, it appears. What exactly is the situation, the day-to-day situation of being in a war?
Yeah, thank you for asking. And so for me, I'm fine. I have, as long as I can spend money, that's possible for me. I am not someone to really worry about as far as danger. Well, yeah, the other day I had somebody from a volunteer armed group pull a gun on me because who knows why, but the situation here is actually quite dangerous. And so if it wasn't for me having a Ukrainian colleague of mine, it wouldn't be safe for me to be here, and I would actually have left the country. So it's martial law. And so, yes, there are some dangerous points, but you maintain your calm, you use your street smarts, and you do the very best you can. I'm fine with food and housing and everything, particularly as I help to transport families to and from the border. But right now, the primary concerns are for people who don't have any resources at all, people who are immigrants to this country, Black and brown people, again, the disabled. Those are the people who have it the worst.
I did want to ask you about that update on Black and brown people. There have been reports, of course, that they've not been treated the same as other Ukrainians. Can you give us some perspective on what's happening with those people?
Yes, so in regards to the allegations of racism at the border, yes, those reports are actually true. And in fact, some members of the government and the parliament have actually acknowledged the racism that has taken place at the border. I've spoken with one MP who acknowledged the problem, but he says that since that occurred last week, they are creating corridors and other means through which these students, the Black and brown folks, would have safer and more respectful passages outside of the country. And so, the issue of racism is not something that's germane to Ukraine or actually new here or Poland or elsewhere. And so, whatever, again, this is a war, and all these issues that are already have taken place are just being further exacerbated. A brief story of mine to kind of punctuate the issue of passport privilege. I was taking a family to the border to Slovakia. Me, obviously, I'm a Black man that's taking this kind of quote unquote white family there. Meeting them on the other side of the border was another Black man, a British Black man. And so what I've realized is that my ability to go back and forth across the border, or my confidence, I would say, has a lot to do with the fact that I'm American. Otherwise, I would be in a similar situation as those folks that come from the continent of Africa and elsewhere. And so you do see the inequities and you do see the unfairness of who has the right passport. It's something that's happening here, but also government has said that they've responded to it and are taking those allegations seriously.
What would you like to see the United States do to intervene here, if anything at all, Terrell?
There are conversations about a no-fly zone. I would like to see it at least take place over Western Ukraine so that people can safely get to the border and outside of the country. Ultimately, sanctions need to be further increased. Sanctions need to be a bit more severe towards the Russian economy. Sanctions are more of an art than science, but right now, President Vladimir Putin is not accountable to anyone. He never has, he never will. And so whatever sanctions are taking place against the country may be inconsequential, because he has no accountability of running the government. He never has, but definitely squeezing his inner circle to the best of their abilities and squeezing and making life really difficult for people inside the country so that you hope that they would turn on him again. That's a very precarious situation, but given what's happening right now, and what's so unique to Russia, that may be the only option in order to end this war that many people in Russia seemingly approve of.
Yeah, the reports out of there are alarming. Gary, I believe, is still on the phone with us. Gary, I hope you can hear me. Vice President Harris heading overseas to meet with Polish and Iranian leaders to talk about Russia's invasion. I'd like your perspective on that.
Yes, I'm here. And this is a good signal to the world. It's a good signal to NATO. And the final analysis, it's required. It's good politics, and it is good policy that the vice president is headed to Warsaw and Budapest. That she's headed to Poland, Romania. It's good policy, good politics. It's needed and necessary.
Agreed.
Terrell, what would you say you want to see from just regular American citizens? What should their approach be to what's happening there in Ukraine?
Well, as far as what the average American citizen can do, first of all, is to be vigilant about the fact that totalitarianism is something that can impact not only Ukraine, but the rest of the world. Ultimately, what if a missile strike were to incidentally hit Poland or Slovakia or Romania that was actually intended for Ukraine? That can instantly escalate this issue from a military standpoint. Also, if you wanted to support people here in Ukraine, there are a number of charity organizations that I'm going to be discussing on my Twitter timeline over the next few days. The number one thing is that they need humanitarian support and be mindful of ways in which they can give in that regard. In regards to, again, going back to how why should Americans care? Again, it's really an issue of having a nation that run by Putin who has decided that he is going to reinvent a post-imperial society, one that will ultimately impact the rest of us all. And so we have to be vigilant about the fact that these type of leaders exist, and really ask ourselves, how much are we willing to collectively invest in the security of another nation in order to secure ourselves?
Terrell, thank you so much for joining us. Please stay safe. Thank you for continuing to keep us updated. We'll check in with you again, of course. Terrell Germain, star journalist, appreciate it, in Ukraine. And Gary Clark, also professor, joining us by telephone. Thank you both so much for this update on Ukraine. And a WNBA star arrested in Russia after the break, details on charges that she